This is a breaking news alert from 6 News.
Good evening, everyone. We're cutting in tonight following some breaking news in downtown Lansing. That's where people have been protesting police brutality since this morning following the fatal arrest of a black man in Minneapolis. The day started with a peaceful protest at the Capitol in Lansing, but has devolved as the day has gone on. It started late this afternoon in East Lansing, as you can see, where protesters smashed in the windows of a police car. This appeared to happen right outside of police headquarters, and although police did not seem to make moves to stop them. And later, protesters flipped over a car that you can see right here along the 100 block of South Washington Square, just a block or so from the Capitol in Lansing. And the car caught fire and burned itself out. Firefighters did not respond to the scene that we're aware of, and we're not exactly sure how the fire started. Then just down the way, protesters smashed the front windows of Chase Bank, and a protester could be seen throwing what appeared to be a rock at the windows. Then multiple protesters joined in on what was happening. And in the last 20 minutes or so, we're told that police have started using tear gas to disperse the crowd. Here's just one picture that we have right now, but we're going to take you out back live to the scene in Lansing. Joining us now is Kaylee Marentet. Kaylee, what's happening right now?
Hey, Kira. Yeah, police just started moving down the street. This was the second round of tear gas that police used. First, they came up Allegan Street from the Capitol and threw tear gas bombs down over here. You can actually see, if you look down, there's actually a mark right here from one of the bombs, and you can see there's still debris right here. This is still warm, but this is one of the bombs that police are shooting off with tear gas. We were out here. This tear gas is really, we could see people out here using milk to try to wash their eyes out. There were a lot of people out here that did get gassed. As you can see, people are kind of revving their engines around this down Washington Street. Police are still making their way down Washington Street. They're far down there. But the second round of tear gas, they did walk down Washington Street and were throwing tear gas bombs again. But as you can take a look right here, this car was set on fire earlier. This is all that's left. I couldn't even tell you the color or make or model right now. This was a black car earlier, and it's still smoking. There were no firefighters that came here to put it out. It's just slowly burned out. As you can see, people are taking pictures of it. People were standing in front of it, taking pictures of themselves. So again, this protest started at 11 o'clock this morning at the Capitol building, where then people walked to the East Lansing Police Department. An East Lansing Police Department cruiser was smashed there. But one of the protesters told me that's not what they're trying to promote. They weren't trying to promote violence. But that really took a turn when we came back down to downtown Lansing, when that car was flipped and set on fire, and then those chase windows were smashed.
And the protest did turn violent tonight in downtown Lansing, and that's where we find our Kaylee Marentet. Kaylee, what's happening there now?
Kira, things have really calmed down just within the last half hour. It's almost eerie quiet. Really no protesters out here, just officers still surrounding buildings. But I got to show you what happened earlier. We're at the Lansing Police Department, and their door is completely shattered. One of their doors is completely shattered. This is just one of the many buildings that have been affected by people tagging them, breaking in their glass and damaging other buildings. To give you another example of another building, the Romney building, police are completely surrounding it right now. Glass was broken out, doors were shattered, and police won't really let us get close. That's just one of the many buildings, though, and this has been a long day down in downtown Lansing. It started at 11 o'clock earlier today at the Capitol building when people made the trek to East Lansing, where an East Lansing police cruiser was smashed in. And then when the protesters came back down to downtown Lansing and on the intersection of Allegan and Washington, that's when things really took a turn. A car was flipped and set on fire, and that's when police really started to get involved. They came down, and then shortly after, multiple people broke into the windows of a Chase Bank, some of them even trying to go in and loot, which actually caused a fight because they said they're not trying to loot. But a lot of damage was done here. Shortly after, multiple rounds of tear gas were given out, rounds even just a couple hours ago. But right now, it's eerie quiet. There's a lot of damage that's been done. and we haven't really seen half of it. But again, the door was smashed in. There was a dumpster fire that crews had to put out. And there's still even stains of milk on sidewalks from people trying to wash out their eyes from the tear gas. We were in some of those tear gas, and people were affected for a long time after. But we'll have more for you on tonight on WLNS.com, following through the night to see how things go. For now, here for you in Lansing, Kaylee Marentet, 6 News.
All right, Ashley, thank you. And throughout this protest, hundreds of people walked from the Capitol in Lansing to East Lansing and back, constantly speaking out against police brutality. Ashley Graham was there, and she's here for you now with an overview of the day.
Here we caught up with one of the organizers during the middle of the protest today, early in the afternoon. She says she never expected for so many people to respond to her Facebook event and to come out and support, but she was happy to see all of them.
What started as a small gathering between friends turned into more than 1,000 people crowded on the Capitol lawn, determined to send a message that they say has been said time and time again.
This didn't start just with this last incident. This started years ago. And I think that people are just slowly just getting tired of seeing this, seeing photos and seeing videos of people senselessly getting killed and senselessly getting harassed.
They demanded justice for George Floyd after he died during an arrest in Minneapolis last week, justice for other black and brown people killed by police officers in recent years, and for an end to police brutality.
We do need law enforcement, but we need good police to police the right way, not to kill us and kill and not be held accountable. And that's anybody, black, white, I don't care who you are, to love one another and to embrace one another.
In between speeches at the Capitol steps and almost non-stop chanting, they marched together around the Capitol and going as far out as the East Lansing Police Department. For several hours, they were determined to keep things peaceful.
I'm not about violence. I'm about peace and love. There's a way to do anything. We have to walk in love. We have to treat each other with respect.
And send the right message.
I want all of you to make it home tomorrow, so that way you can come back and organize. Organizing is more than just this one moment. It's more than just being on the front lines.
Before the protest started, we also spoke with leaders from Lansing, East Lansing, and Ingham County law enforcement, and they stood together this morning to condemn police brutality and express that they would keep protesters safe during the rally. Kiera, back to you.
Ashley, thank you. Following the lead of other major cities across the state, Lansing Mayor Andy Shore has set a curfew for 9 p.m. tonight. It will last until 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, and he put the curfew in place because of the protests and of the way it unfolded later this afternoon. Mayor Shore says in a statement, quote, "The rally this afternoon was peaceful and respectful and focused on expressing anger and frustration with police brutality and racial injustice." He adds the situation unfolded quickly, but police were there to keep the city safe. Well, things in downtown Lansing did take a turn for the worst, and after protesters got destructive. 6 News reporter Brittany Flowers has been covering the protest since it started this morning. She's here for you now with when things went south.
A bank is destroyed, a car burned, and multiple rounds of tear gas deployed in downtown Lansing tonight after things take a drastic turn from today's protest against police brutality. The destruction started late this afternoon with a police car destroyed outside the East Lansing Police Department.
We are non-violent. This does not solve anything. This does not solve our problems. This does not solve the legislation. This does not give George Floyd's murderer to jail. This is not what we came here to do. We don't destroy property. The cop that had this car has not done nothing to us. This is not what we represent.
But despite intentions of a peaceful protest, less than 2 hours later, the destruction continues after some of the protesters take over the streets after heading back to downtown Lansing. A number of those people still pleading for others not to turn to violence. Police eventually forced to make their way towards the protesters, sending out multiple rounds of tear gas. A number of these protests against police brutality have turned destructive across the state. And while many say this was not what was supposed to happen here tonight, others are sending a different message. Here for you in Lansing, Brittany Flowers, 6 News.
What started out as a peaceful afternoon erupted into a chaotic evening in downtown Lansing. Chase Bank is just one of the many buildings facing severe damage. An earlier Sunday evening, a car was flipped and set on fire. Multiple rounds of tear gas was released into crowds of thousands of people. The Romney building's windows were destroyed, along with the Lansing Police Department's door shattered. Officers with the Lansing Police say this is the worst damage they've seen to the department. And for Chief Green, he says he's disappointed with how this day turned out.
Things started off extremely well, and then it turned into a riot. We had looters, we had people assaulting others, we had arsons, we had disorderly conduct, and a number of other offenses that many of the rioters engaged in. They were assaultive, threw bottles at our police officers. We did the best we could to mitigate as much damage as we could.
Chief Green says they're going to start rebuilding tomorrow, but there's a lot to clean up. We will continue following the aftermath of these violent protests on air and online at WLNS.com. Here for you with Lansing, Kaylee Marentet, 6 News.
Just a couple of hours after yesterday's violence, but it's a much different scene now. More than 100 people have come out to help clean the downtown area, armed with brooms, shovels, and other tools. I was out here earlier this morning at 6, and it really looks much different. Broken glass and trash has been picked up from most streets, and for the most part, people are following social distancing, wearing face masks as well. I spoke with one of the organizers of this event, and she says it's really a time to come together. And Mayor Andy Shore was also out here. He said he is furious about what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, but burning down Lansing will not help fix the problem.
Well, earlier this morning, we spoke with Governor Gretchen Whitmer to get her response to last night's events in downtown.
There were certainly a lot of demonstrators who peacefully protested, who were organizing and focused on solving problems. And then there were others that I think came in under the guise of supporting that, but were actually more intent on creating harm. And I think that undermines the work that we need to do in this country, and I'm hopeful that we don't see more of it.
The Lansing Police Department arrested 13 people, and Michigan State Police say they arrested 4 others. All offenses will be taken seriously.
MSP will take, when it comes to significant damage to building, violence, and destruction.
The video behind me shows a sign of hope of people cleaning up the streets to get the city back to the way it was. I spoke with people who had a mix of emotions after what happened last night, from anger to helplessness and overall sadness. This morning, I talked to someone who was at the protest from start to finish. She says at the beginning, things were peaceful, everyone coming together for one purpose. She says things took a turn for the worse when someone drove their car into a crowd. But she said she wasn't surprised.
Well, one of the striking images from the protest and riot yesterday in Lansing was a car that was flipped over and on fire in the middle of the street downtown.
Protesters tell 6 News the car was flipped over because a woman was threatening or trying to hit people with her car. And tonight, some of those protesters say they want to know why police didn't act yesterday and what they're doing about it today.
6 News reporter Asha Patel spoke with one protester today who recorded video of what went down. She's here for you now live in our studio. Asha, what can you tell us?
Sherry and Lauren, this car was the one that was flipped and set on fire at Sunday's protest. Today I spoke with someone who was right there and says he has a different video, one that shows what happens moments before. Take a look at this video captured by Britton Collier. He says the woman was driving about 10 to 15 miles per hour through the protesters, and at one point she even reversed to try to get protesters to stop punching, kicking, and throwing water bottles at her car. Collier says although he did not capture anyone getting hit in this video, he hopes this video can help police.